Ever think about how your emails actually, get where they need to go? I mean, it's kind of wild when you think about it. You type something here in Australia and boom, it's in someone's inbox in, I don't know, Canada, seconds later.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
So today we are going deep on something most folks probably don't even know exists, but it's super important. MX records.
MX records.
They're like the GPS for your email, making sure all those messages end up right where they should be. And we've got a fantastic resource to guide us, a blog post from Now Technology Systems, an Aussie company that knows a thing or two about websites and email.
They really do. This blog post is a treasure trove of info, especially for, well, any business that relies on email, really.
Okay, so let's get right into it. What exactly are MX records? They're about domains, but I gotta admit, the whole thing sounds kind of like a secret code or something.
I get that. It can sound a little complicated, but the idea is actually pretty simple.
Okay, good.
MX, it stands for mail exchange, and it's basically a set of instructions, right? They tell those email servers where to deliver messages for a specific domain name.
Okay.
So think of it this way. If your email is, say, you@yourcompany.com, the MX record for yourcompany.com, that's what tells the servers, hey, send anything for this domain here.
Oh, okay. So it's like an address book for the internet. But instead of listing street addresses, it's listing where to send the emails for certain domains.
You got it. Exactly. And just like a physical address, if the information's wrong, your mail doesn't arrive.
Right. Makes sense.
Imagine your mail carrier's trying to find your house, but the address is messed up. You're going to miss important deliveries, bills, maybe even some birthday cards.
Yeah. No, definitely don't want that.
And it's the same with your emails. Without the right MX record, those critical messages, they could just vanish, lost in the digital void.
Poof, gone. So that brings up another question. If these MX records are so vital, why would anyone ever need to change them? It's not something you just do every day, right?
No, not at all. You definitely don't change them every day. But there are a few situations where you might need to update them. One of the most common, switching email providers.
Oh, okay.
Like, say you're a small business owner here in Australia. You've been using, I don't know, a pretty basic email service, but your business is growing and you're ready for something more.
More robust, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. More robust with better security, more storage, the works. When you make that switch, gotta update your MX records to point to those shiny new servers.
So it's like if you move your shop to a new location, you have to tell all your suppliers and customers, hey, this is where we are now.
Exactly.
You want everyone to be able to find you.
Exactly. MX records are kind of like that address update, but for your email. You don't want customers showing up at your old shop, and you don't want emails going to your old provider.
Gotcha. Now, the blog post also mentions needing a more secure path for your emails as a reason to change MX records.
Right.
What exactly does that mean?
Well, email security is a big deal these days. No doubt about it. All the phishing scams, data breaches, it's a lot. Some email providers, they specialize in offering more secure routes. Stronger encryption, better spam filtering, all that good stuff. If you decide to switch to one of those providers, you've got to update your MX records. That way, you can take advantage of those super secure pathways.
So it's kind of like upgrading your home security system.
Yeah.
Going from a simple lock to a, high-tech setup with motion detectors and everything.
That's a great way to put it.
All right. So we've got switching providers, upgrading security. Any other reasons why someone might need to mess with their MX records?
Absolutely. As your business grows, well, you send and receive more emails. It's just natural. Some providers might have limits on how much you can handle, or maybe they're not really built for that kind of volume. So if you're hitting those limits, you might need to switch to a provider that can, handle the traffic.
Like upgrading from a bicycle to a truck when you need to haul more cargo.
I like that.
You need the right tools for the job.
For sure.
Okay. So let's talk about the actual process of changing these MX records. The blog post really emphasizes getting ready beforehand, like backing up your settings, making sure you tell your team what's going on. Why is all that prep work so important?
Well, if you make a mistake while you're changing things, your emails could stop working completely.
Oh, wow.
And that means, no communication with customers, no orders, no invoices. It'd be a big disruption, especially in Australia where everything's so fast-paced digitally. Backing up your settings, that's like insurance.
Okay.
You can always revert back if something goes wrong. And letting your team know, that just helps everyone get ready for any potential hiccups, avoids confusion.
It's like having a safety net, just in case you trip up while, walking a tightrope. They want to fall without any protection.
That's the idea.
So once we've got our backup and we've alerted the troops, what's next?
Figuring out where you actually go to edit these MX records. And this is where it gets a little interesting because the internet, it's like a big city with different districts handling different things.
Okay.
Your domain registrar, they're like City Hall, handling the official address of your website. Your hosting provider is more like the power company, keeping everything running. And your email provider, well, they're like the postal service delivering those messages.
So depending on how your website and email are set up, you might need to log into your account with your domain registrar or your hosting provider to get to the MX records.
Bingo. The blog post mentions a few popular ones here in Australia, like GoDaddy and Bluehost, but you always want to double check with your specific provider to find out where those DNS settings live.
Okay, so I'm logging in now. It looks like I can see, a list of MX records here. What do we need to do next?
Well, that's where we'll pick things up in the next part of our deep dive. We'll walk through the steps, how to actually edit those records, and we'll talk about some common mistakes to avoid.
Ooh, can't wait.
Stay tuned.
All right, so we're back. And we found where those MX records live. It's like we've located the secret control panel for our email.
Aha, that's a good way to put it.
So now how do we actually, change them?
Well, it's a little bit like rewiring a house, but don't worry. It's not as complicated as it might sound. Most domain registrars and hosting providers, they have these user-friendly interfaces for managing your DNS settings. You'll usually see like a table or a list of your existing MX records, and you can edit them, add new ones as needed. It's pretty straightforward.
Okay, well, I'm looking at mine right now, and I see a bunch of numbers, technical terms. It's a little intimidating, if I'm being honest.
I get that. It can definitely be a bit overwhelming at first, but let's break it down a bit. Each MX record, it has a few key elements. First, you've got the priority. That's represented by a number.
Okay.
Think of it like a triage system in a hospital. The most critical emails, like urgent orders, password resets, those need to get through ASAP. So they go to the server with the highest priority, just like the most urgent patients get seen first in the ER, right?
Right.
So those lower priority numbers, that means those servers are the primary destinations for your emails.
Okay, so if I'm switching to a new email provider, I'll need to update the priority to point to their server as the primary destination.
You got it. And you'll get the specific priority number, the server address, from your new provider. It's like giving your mail carrier that updated street address and instructions on which door to deliver to.
Perfect analogy.
Right.
Okay, so what else do we need to know about these MX records?
So besides that priority, you'll see a host name or a domain name.
Okay.
And this is the actual address of the email server. It's if we stick with our address analogy, this would be the street name and house number. Double check this information. Make sure there are no typos. Because even a small error can cause big problems with delivery.
It's like writing the wrong postal code on a letter. It could end up like in a whole different city.
Exactly.
So once I've entered the correct priority and host name for my new email provider, am I good to go? Am I all set?
Almost.
Yeah.
Remember that DNS TTL we talked about?
Yeah, vaguely.
Time to live. It controls how long servers around the internet will remember the old MX records. It's like, imagine you're having a moving sale, right?
Okay.
But it takes days for people to actually see the sign because everyone's still remembering the old one. That's like a long TTL. Lowering it, it's like putting up those bright eye-catching signs so everyone knows about the sale immediately.
So if I lower the TTL, that'll help my new MX records kind of take effect more quickly.
It can speed up the process, yeah. But it's important to check with your DNS provider for their recommendations. Sometimes setting it too low can actually cause other issues.
Good point. Okay, so I've updated the MX records, double-checked everything, adjusted that TTL. What's next?
Testing. Of course, testing.
You wouldn't move into a new house without making sure the plumbing and electricity work right.
Right.
So similarly, you got to test those new MX records, make sure your email's flowing smoothly.
Okay, makes sense. What's the best way to go about testing this?
Start by sending emails to yourself and maybe a few colleagues from different email accounts.
Yeah.
And check that they arrive, that there are no delays, no weird error messages, nothing like that. You can also use some online tools. There's one called MX Toolbox that a lot of people like. It's great for verifying that your MX records are configured correctly.
MX Toolbox, I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, it's pretty handy.
Okay. So one thing that the blog post mentioned was about being patient. And I thought, well, the internet is all about speed. So why do we have to be patient with this? It is. But even with the a super robust internet infrastructure like we have here in Australia, it can still take a little while for those updated records to propagate across all the servers worldwide. It's like, well, it's like news traveling. It takes time for everyone to get the update.
Oh, that's a good way to think about it. Okay, so even if my emails are working okay, I should still give it some time for those changes to fully take effect.
Exactly. The blog suggests waiting at least 24 to 48 hours just to be on the safe side. And remember, thorough testing, that's peace of mind. It means you can confidently communicate with your clients, your partners, whoever, without worrying about emails going, AWOL.
Absolutely. Now, speaking of clients and partners, the blog specifically called out how important MX records are for small businesses here in Australia. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. So think about the online landscape here. It's competitive. Small businesses, they need every advantage they can get and a strong online presence. Well, that's essential. And that includes having reliable email. If your emails are bouncing, going to spam folders, it doesn't look good. It can damage your credibility.
It's like showing up to a business meeting in ripped jeans and a T-shirt. You might have brilliant ideas, but people might not take you as seriously.
Yeah. That's a great analogy. In the digital world, seamless email communication. That's like dressing professionally for that business meeting. It shows you're organized, you're reliable.
So getting these MX records right, it's not just about like good email hygiene. It's actually a strategic move. It can really impact your image, your relationships with customers.
Yeah.
But, isn't email kind of becoming less relevant these days with all the social media and the instant messaging and everything? Do small businesses in Australia really still need to worry about this?
That's a great question. And it's true that, the ways we communicate are constantly evolving, but email, it's still the workhorse for a lot of businesses, especially for more formal things. Sending invoices, sharing important documents, really building those relationships with clients. It's likely to remain a core part of the business landscape for a long time to come.
So even in the age of instant messages and video calls and everything, email still holds its own as a vital tool, especially for small businesses here in Australia.
Absolutely. It might seem like a small technical detail, but getting your MX records right, that's a big step toward building a professional, trustworthy online image, and that can make all the difference in today's world.
Okay, I'm convinced. I'm going to double check my MX records and make sure everything is in tip-top shape.
Yeah.
So before we move on to our final thoughts for our listeners, any other key takeaways that you want to emphasize from all this?
I'd say the biggest takeaways are MX records. They're essential for directing email traffic to the right place. Changing them isn't rocket science, but careful planning, attention to detail, that's crucial. And for small businesses in Australia, mastering this technical side of communication can really be a game changer.
Excellent points. Okay, so we've covered the what, the why, and the how of MX records, but I'm curious to hear your final thoughts for our listeners. What's that big picture message you want to leave them with?
This whole deep dive, it really makes you think,
Yeah.
how these little technical things, stuff most people don't even think about, how they can have a huge impact on a business. Like MX records, who knew, right?
It is true. It's like that old saying, for want of a nail, the shoe was lost. For want of a shoe, the horse was lost. And for want of a horse, the rider was lost. One tiny thing can have a ripple effect.
Exactly. And in the digital world, those tiny things, they're so easy to miss. We're so focused on the big picture, like having a fancy website, creating amazing content, all that. But sometimes we forget about those technical foundations that make it all work in the first place.
Like building a house on a shaky foundation. Doesn't matter how pretty the house is. It's not going to last if the foundation's no good.
Perfect analogy. And those MX records, they're part of that foundation for any business that uses email to communicate.
Okay, so for our listeners who might be feeling a little overwhelmed with all this tech talk, what's the one piece of advice you would give them?
Don't be afraid to dive in and learn. It's totally understandable to feel intimidated by all the jargon and stuff, but you don't have to be a computer whiz to manage your MX records or understand how your website hosting works. There are tons of resources out there, online, and you can always ask an expert if you get stuck.
That's a great point. There are so many people out there who love this stuff and are happy to help make it understandable for everyone. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Knowledge is power, right? Especially in this digital world.
Absolutely. And even small steps, they make a difference. Learning one new thing a day, that adds up over time.
So it's about having that mindset of always learning and being curious about how things work.
Yeah.
The internet, it's a big and ever-changing place,
Yeah.
but it's full of opportunities for those who want to explore.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And with that, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive. But before we go, I wanted to leave our listeners with one final thought.
Oh, I love a good parting thought. What's on your mind?
Well, as we get more and more reliant on all this digital stuff, it's easy to forget there are real people on the other end of those emails, those messages.
Oh, yeah.
So my challenge for our listeners is this. Take what you've learned today about MX records, about all this internet stuff, and use it to not only make your systems better, but also to connect with people, in a real, genuine way.
That's a beautiful thought. It's a good reminder that technology, when it's at its best, it should help us connect better, not replace those connections.
Exactly. So let's all go out there and use our digital knowledge to build bridges, create understanding, and just make the world a more connected place.
Love it. Here's to stronger connections, seamless communication. Until next time, everyone, happy emailing.